And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who come in late, we are now having a little cooking session right here on the scene, putting the pot on in here. And we like for you to join in with us and have a ball.
Okay, so this is Dara. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at just laying out our sprint board. Although I do want to tuck away the different things that we're doing for like our roadmap and sprint planning. We're probably going to have a page that's sprint review. Maybe there'll be some other pages where we tuck the table away. Where we spend most of our time is going to be in sprint. So I do want a table just out in the open that's going to be us working on the sprint. So let's go ahead and link to our stories table. And I'm going to change this to be the board view. And then instead of seeing it by epic, or instead of seeing it by type, I want to look at it by the status. So let's go ahead and say group by status. All right, so I want to add a filter because I want to make sure that I'm only looking at the current sprint. Okay. And then I'm going to hide a couple columns. So I don't need the no status column. If you recall, that's that's our inbox. I don't need the grooming column because we don't groom in this view. We're just sprinting. I also don't need the closed column because that's when we close out the sprint. So that leaves us with our, ready to work, our in process, blocked, review, complete, etc. And then to make these cards a little less tall, I don't really need to see all the information in here about them. So I'm going to go in and view the properties. I want, of course, who it's assigned to and if there's a due date. I don't need hours, label, parent, release. It's all going to be the same sprint. I don't need status because that's what the columns are. Type could be helpful. So I'm going to put type back. All right. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that as we're working through our sprint, like you see this one has comments. So we could be adding commentary as we go along. It's very easy to add comment. Let me add a fresh comment here. Okay, and no, Solar's not paying me, but it's just a good search appliance. So we can be adding comments, and then if decisions are made, those decisions should be brought down into the page. And if you recall, this page should have all the requirements about the ticket. This one happens to be an action item, so it might be empty to begin with, or it might be the discussion that was had to get started. But all the other ones should have your standard, like, let's see, this is a task, so it should be a task template, so it should have this information requirement, acceptance criteria, etc. So I'd want to make any decisions that we did in the comments, I'd want to move them down here. So then as we move through the sprint, it's pretty straightforward because you just take your work and you say, okay, I'm ready to get started, and you move it to in progress. As soon as your work is done, you move it to review so that, the person who's supposed to review it needs to review it, and then you just simply assign that person. So in this case, we're going to do code review. So I want to go ahead and add our lead developer, and I'll say okay. So pretty straightforward in how it works. It's really easy, really smooth. I mean, the Kanban board is just kind of out of the box, the right thing to do in Notion, so it's not complex. So you've seen this in Jira, you've seen this in Trello, and now you see it here in Notion. So let's go ahead and look at, what happens at the end of sprint. So let's just, quickly, throw some things in the complete column. Let's just grab a couple of things. Everything should be, in some stage of being worked on or in review. For interest, let's make something blocked. All right. And hopefully actually more stuff is complete. So let's, you don't really want to go into a sprint where like everything is like still in progress. That means it wasn't a successful sprint. So we're just going to say there's a couple things that got caught in the sprint, but everything else was completed. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to create a new page that is sprint review. So this is basically the opposite of grooming, right? So in grooming, we were getting stuff ready for the sprint. In sprint review, we're taking things out of the sprint. And again, I want that board view. Oops, did I not take it? And we want to group by status. And we don't need, oops, woohoo, don't ever do that. You don't want to delete your property. Just hide it. I don't need ready to work. All right, so now we do want to keep these open because we might want to talk about why these things didn't get done, like why they didn't move to complete. But otherwise, with the stuff that's completed, we want to move these out of sprint. And just so we're not looking at too many properties here, let's take away date. Actually, I want to keep hours. Let's take away label, parent, release. Status. So in theory, this should still be all sprint 1, right? Because that's the stuff that we moved into sprint. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that property as well. I'm not going to filter by the sprint because if there is something that got stuck between sprints, this is a good way to make sure that it got closed out, right? So what I do want to do is I want to come in and let's create a second view. So this view is just the to reconcile what's happening with these three, right? In fact, we could have probably hid this column for this view. So now we're going to create another board view. Or no, a list would be the fastest. Let's do the table view would actually be the fastest. And I haven't shown a table view in here. So let's say this is closing. And I might regret this, but let's just try it anyway. So we want to show who's it signed to. We want the hours. Okay, and we need to filter. Okay, so these are the things we completed. And so really all we want to do is we want to take these hours out and close them. Right, so just go through and take the hours out. I am regretting doing it this way because I do want to just drag the status over. So let's change this view to board view. And again, we'll have to set it back up. Now, at least it did retain the completed. And maybe you can even do it in 2 steps. We could have taken all the hours out and then we could have moved it over to closed. I I'm thinking now everything that we've ever closed is going to show in closed after a while. So this would actually, we would actually want this to be hidden as well when we drag it over so that we're not seeing that full list. But yeah, we still need to come out and make sure all the hours are empty. So maybe that other view was better for just clearing the hours. So I wish there was an automatic way. And maybe, if you're watching this video and you know that there's a trick that I could use to automatically say if the status equals, such and such, then the hours equal 0. Because that's actually what's needed here to really do this right. So I'm going to change this to saying clear hours. What was this view? This view was the review. And then I want to create a view that's going to be closing. And again, let's hide. Right, so the only column we actually need is completed. The reason I'm also closing close is that after a while, all our tickets that we've had in the past are going to be in the closed view. And so if we have it as a column, we're going to have this long column of tickets. But by doing it this way, we just have the things that are in this sprint. So I can just select them and move them into closed. That's the easiest way to close them out. So this, the review thing was a little bit more manual than it would have been in Jira, maybe, because you still need to go in and close those tickets at the end of sprint. So in Jira, you would have said like, there's a button that just says end the sprint, and all the things that are complete would go to closed, or I guess the terminology in Jira is done, would go to closed, and then you wouldn't have to worry about those hours. So I guess this is a little bit more work in terms of doing our sprint review, but in terms of all the other like functionality, we have more functionality than we had in Jira. So I'm willing to like spend a little bit extra time in our review meetings to get this stuff closed out. And maybe even like once everybody's said like, yeah, those things are definitely done, maybe that's something that the BA does on their own outside the meeting, so everyone doesn't have to sit and watch the clearing of hours and the moving of the tickets over to closed. All right, so that actually brings us to the end of doing user stories in Notion. I can't think of anything else that I would want to do off the top of my head. We've got our roadmap in grooming, we've got our planning, we've got our sprint review, and we've got our day-to-day work doing the sprint. I can't really think of anything else that I would need to build here, but if I do, I'll make a video later on that I'll add to this playlist. But for now, that's it. So in the next section, we're going to talk about building out a design pattern library, which I feel is an essential piece of having, really good, strong foundation in your web products. All right, so take care. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you next time.